Toronto City Ransom, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World Review.
Like most young adults growing up at the turn of the decade and having the internet become a mainstay in my day-to-day life, I was into the Scott Pilgrim graphic novels, and I still think it's an interesting piece of media history, being as big as it was due to the overflowing amount of nerd wish fulfillment within it. I read the graphic novels, and the movie was even one of my first Blu-rays that I ever bought. However, by the time I was aware of the game, I didn't own a PS3 or a 360, and the game was delisted in December of 2014, only after 4 years of being released. So I was excited to hear the game was being re-released in its entirety. Before I say any more, I must say that I've never played a beat 'em up or a brawler before, so if any of the complaints I make don't make sense in the context of the genre, I do apologize. After doing some research, I did discover where the game's more dated parts came from. It's almost a complete replication of vs.the Ransom, which in and of itself has become dated. So, what does this mean for Scotty Boy? Let's begin. Controlling any of the characters does feel a bit off-putting, and it didn't help that I played with the Switch's Joy-Cons. The one piece of advice I can give to any Switch owners looking to get this game: play with anything but the Joy-Cons. Even find a way to play with the Ring Kong or something, but jokes aside, due to sprinting not having its own fucking dedicated button, Scott Pilgrim will have you knocking your Joy-Con's pathetic joysticks to the side twice. What's the most annoying thing about this is that the bottom most triggers go unused, which could have easily been a nice option, and lining up your character to pick up a weapon or to perform an attack was something that I had to get used to, as I would always try to adjust my position, which would result in your character jumping down or jumping up in a column, which was responsible for a handful of damage I took during my time. Other than those two tidbits, I got used to the controls, and after trying out the other characters in the first level against my first attempt with Kim, who is the best girl of the series, I found out that I was able to clear the level and defeat Matthew Patel in only one attempt. The game's controls are a mix between getting familiar and how it works and memorizing enemy patterns and level patterns, just like most games in the retro era of the NES. The art style of the great Brian O'Malley was translated beautifully to pixelated sprites that breathe life into these characters. There are little details like Kim Pine having a sadistic smile when using weapons, and the complete look of panic on Scott's face when he's knocked down. They didn't just turn them into sprites, effort was put into animating them, and it does show. They even sneak in a shit ton of references to other games and media, just like the graphic novel. Kim exits a level by riding a star like Kirby, both Steven Stills and Knives Child reference Mario by using a warp pipe or by doing a peace sign with white gloves. Backgrounds look amazing, and every part of this game fits Brian's hyper-stylized art to a T. Now, I wasn't familiar with Anamanaguchi, but the one thing I heard constantly mentioned when this game was brought up was its soundtrack, which I did listen to once when I was trying to find a way to play this game back in the day. Safe to say that this is still a great soundtrack, and even Another Winter, the track for the opening level, is still one of their most listened to songs. Mixing the use of real instruments and software found in old gaming hardware like the NES and Game Boy Advance make for a unique sound and entry into Nintendo core if that genre is still kicking. Gameplay is where I found most of my problems, which isn't a good thing for any game. It took me a while to work out that the leveling system not only gave you access to new moves that are pretty much integral to beating this game, but the shopping district level isn't just a backdrop, but you can actually go into each store and buy items that level up stats. While this is taken straight out of vs.the Ransom, it suits the world perfectly, where everyday life is characterized as a video game, just like in the novels. While I really liked this feature, it was a bit confusing and unclear. Enemies can straight up be the cheapest pieces of shit at times. Throughout the whole game, you have enemies standing in levels, and as soon as you get remotely close to them, they turn around and attack you at lightning speed before you can even react. Yet another thing left up to memorizing and the fact that there are also enemies that just straight up hide off screen who jump out and attack you. It is important that you get used to blocking. On first attempts you will die a few times, and this is made worse by the fact that lives don't replenish after beating a level, which is a mechanic of retro games that doesn't really work here. This led me to starting the next level and losing right before at the boss fight because I had one or less lives left. Unless I missed something, maybe I had to buy more lives in the shopping district, but this just felt like they're paying homage to the retro era with this mechanic, but not really working it into the game all too well. It is satisfying to beat up huge groups of enemies after leveling up and getting new moves, however. At the start you may feel underpowered, but on the complaint of retro homage getting in the way of a good time, if you were like me and noticed buying the Smashing Turnips grants 8 strength because I genuinely like the band reference, the Smashing Pumpkins, it'll be clear very quickly that you have to wait between buying items and you can't just buy multiples of the same item. This is straight up fucking annoying, and I think it's worth patching because even Earthbound and I think Undertale had this, and it was a pain there too. After going through a few levels with other characters, I noticed that even with level 1 characters, you can beat levels in single attempts, after learning how it all works of course. So it is a bit of a learning curve, and like all games, it's especially true that the more experience and time you put into it, the better you'll get, and you'll have to learn how to counter enemies at times because of their absolute cheapness. Even though I said in my last video I was going to be playing with friends, this ended up not being the case. But I can say that this game is perfect for the Switch as a couch co-op game. So as long as you either have tiny hands for the Joy-Cons or enough third-party controllers for all, you should be fine. The story here follows the graphic novels a lot closer than the movie, and even carves out its own little unique beats, like Kim and Knives' relationship being more prevalent here. I especially found it funny that summoning her to heal me would cause enemies to take damage and scream in rage. More like Scott Pilgrim vs. the Incels. Just like in appearance, the story is translated extremely well, and even though there pretty much isn't any dialogue, this really works well for the game. Plus, I think it was in the developer's mindset that most who wanted to play this game when it first came out were already familiar with the source material. Even if you aren't, the way it's told here is still serviceable and doesn't take away from the experience at all. Despite this game coming out at the turn of the decade, this game just bleeds 2000s culture, from how the characters dress and the culture on display. This doesn't make it feel dated, more so a product of the early internet culture that ends up being as nostalgic as a MySpace page. With all that being said, one final complaint before I summarize my feelings and score this game. Ubisoft. Stop making people sign up for Uplay. Thankfully, I already had one, but when I first booted up this game, Knives was not selectable. I thought, okay, so I might have to beat the game, as she appears to be a special summon for everyone, so that would make sense. After getting the game's first patch, I was given an offer. Unlock Knives Chow by signing into Uplay. Fuck off, you guys. It was advertised that this is the complete edition of the game. Why the fuck did you lock behind one of the advertised DLCs that's included behind your service that, frankly, no one wants to use? I don't know if this is the only way to unlock her, but it's fucking bullshit. With that small rant done, how do I feel overall about the game? Well, it filled me with a lot of rage because of its mechanics and design, which is a problem because the gameplay is the main content. You can get better and level up your character, which elevates it, and the whole problem left is little issues like trying to buy multiples of items. Everything else here I fell in love with, the style, the soundtrack, and I just love these characters. Oh, this game was developed in 5 months to meet the release of the movie. Well, that's no excuse, but impressive that this game is as good as it is. Now, while patching can fix problems, that also brings about whether or not to keep the original integrity of the game. I'll link a video below of the patches made to the original game that objectively made it worse in some places, but it'll be up to developers if they choose to do any changes. As it stands, I love this game but struggle with its gameplay here and there. I'm giving it a 7.8 out of 10. Alright, first review of the year done. I do intend on doing more of this channel to help it grow, and I'm grateful that my small following has been patient with me. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. If you think there's anything I can improve, I would love to hear it and make steps in the right direction. This is going to be a big year for me, not just for the games planning to come out and the promise of reviewing anime and movies soon, but life as well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you around.